My favorite day of the year. I don't know about yours, but pretty special for these guys. pretty special for these guys to culminate their time, 3 years that they've been working really hard at the projects. So I think without further ado, I don't know who would want to start. You got it, Casey. You're sitting beside us. You got it, yeah.
I'm Casey. I am the art lead on Soulframe at Digital Extremes.
I have name tags for all of you guys. I just didn't want to have to wear it all day. So at dinner we'll give you them, and you'll know who they are when you get to meet later on. Do you want to go ahead, James?
My name is Jamie, and I'm the art director across the street at Big Blue Bubble.
Hey everyone, I'm Derek. I'm the principal lighting artist at Digital Extremes on Warframe, sometimes Soulframe, and the general bane of this guy's existence.
Hi, I'm Joel. I do weapons for Soulframe.
Yeah!
Hello. Those who don't, I'm Brandon. I'm a principal character artist at Digital Extremes, also an instructor for Portfolio 2.
I'm Matt. I'm a resident old guy, and I'm Derek's biggest fan.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a principal designer at Inflection Games.
My name is Lionel, and I'm the lead environment at Gearbox.
My name is Jeff. I work for St. Joseph's Healthcare London. I lead a research center, and we're looking at how we can implement your technology into patient care.
I'm currently in the film industry working for curated VFX, but I taught a lot of you last year, so I'm excited to see what you produce.
The other side out. You guys out.
Everybody know me as an animation instructor at Fanshawe. It's so good to see you all. I'm also an animator with something like just short of 20 years of experience, and I'm a CG and GP and cinematics animator. I'm currently at Squeeze Animation Studios at the moment. Good to see you all.
Hello everyone, my name is Lavo. I'm a technical animator at Ubisoft Toronto.
Hello everyone, I'm Luisa. I was a CG supervisor for Films and TV, and I'm a lead tech art in Ubisoft.
I'm Nancy. I am an environment artist at Certain Infinity, and I'm also doing my PhD studies at TNU.
Hello, I'm Madeline, and I'm a senior technical artist at Ubisoft, working on the Splinter Cell remake.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm an animation supervisor at Outpost Visual.
Hello, I'm Julia. I'm a game designer at Ubisoft Toronto.
I'm Paul. I'm the CTO of Dare to Dream Games and also Crosswind Financial, and I hired 3 of you guys last year.
I'm Brian.
I work in production at Digital Extremes.
My name is Michael. I am a game director on New Start. I used to work at Ubisoft right now, but I'm a New Start game director.
At least I think that's everyone, if you've managed to hide. So we're going to have some fun. Really excited. You want to just take it off, and then we'll bring up the...
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, before we begin, I just want to do some shout outs to the people here. One is to our instructors. Can you put up your hands, please? Come on, Rob, get up your hands. We've got Alan, we've got Anthony, put up your hand. And you know what? All the behind the scenes, I said Pedro. You wanted it twice, didn't you? Yeah. All the behind the scenes of running the programs, working with the students, we couldn't do it without you. I don't think there's any admin here, but thanks to them as well for paving the way. There's a lot of other things financial that go into the behind the scenes that we want to thank. And I know you all introduced yourselves, but I think you deserve, hold on, a super round of applause because we have our local industry which we rely on and the people that come and show up for these events, that do guest speaking. But we've got our Toronto contingent, which is a super big day because they have to travel here and on the way home. Makes for a very long day. And we just want to say thank you for your participation because this is so important to our students. Thank you so much. To all our guests, you're going to be listening to presentations and any feedback. Our students are used to it. We've grilled them for years already. Any feedback, any comments, any advice that you want to give to them after the presentation, please do so. Okay, Jeff, are we good to start? Okay. First team.
We're going to do Diane.
Yeah. One thing that we do want to talk about, especially to our industry members, and even a lot of our students don't know, we're involved in a lot of sort of outside collaborative work. For example, this space that you're in. It's a year old, our new virtual production studio. We purchased one of these beautiful screens in addition to a brand new Vicon 24 camera Vicon motion capture system on the space. And this was donated by a family. The woman was Diane Blake, who comes from the healthcare industry. She donated $5 million to us to build out the studio. We purchased a whole bunch of high-end cameras for virtual production, virtual reality gear that we're using here as a pilot project. And her goal, she was really like, you take the money and do something for the healthcare industry. And we're like, wow, that's amazing. So we are working with a sort of team. Pedro is leading the team, and we've got some students here. So the goal with this is that Diane Blake said, create some educational training for the healthcare industry. So what you're seeing here is an early kind of prototype where we've got some students. Yeva, put up your hand. Is Katiana in here as well? No, okay. So those are two work study students that are working with the professors outside of their studies, working on this project. So we're working in the studio. The students are building the assets. We are using, of course, the Shogun software in the Vicon system. We are live linking into Unreal to do all the captures using MetaHuman. So we're trying to push the technology as much as we can, but the end goal is to create virtual reality educational training that we are going to be using in our healthcare studios here in Fanshawe. So imagine this is the first pilot. It's for respiratory health. And so students in that program at Fanshawe are going to be able to go into a virtual reality room, put on the headset. They're going to be tested in an environment. So imagine like a nurse in an operating room. Of course, you don't want them to necessarily learn on the job. You know, first day in an operating room, you want them to have a lot of skills and prep before they get into an emergency situation like that. So not only is this super interesting for us, and it's pushing other boundaries that we talked about upstairs as far as healthcare and using the technology for those things. It gives students experience, terminology in different sectors, right? Now, this is Diane Blake. This is one project at Fanshawe. And if you're from London, you probably heard that last year WSIB, the Workmen's Safety Insurance Board, I think they're in the old IBM,
Yeah, the Death Star. Yeah.
right? On Veterans Park, they moved their headquarters now to London, and they donated $20 million to Fanshawe to do the same virtual reality training for people like first responders, accident prevention. And if you had a chance to be at main campus, we've got a brand new 5-story building. The entire 3rd floor is dedicated to them. And with all that money, the equipment there, so this is, I think, a 28-foot wall. When we bought this one, we bought a 44-foot wall for main campus. We bought another Vicon system, plus scanning volumes, all sorts of things. So we're really trying to push the technology into different sectors now. And the students, the benefit is that our students aren't just working in games, but they're really learning other vocabularies in other sort of markets, right? Also too, and we're talking to industry about this because we tend to work in silos. We bring a lot of you in. I have a lot of you come in as guest speakers virtually and in person, which is amazing, right? That we build connections, but it's also for you to know that we're here. We've got the technology, we're doing really cool things, and if you ever feel like reaching out and starting a pilot project with our students in our studio. So this is our newest motion capture studio. We've got another motion capture studio on the 2nd floor, which is an OptiTrack system, so it's different than Vicon. So students are trained on both. Yeah, Jeff, did you want to talk about Sarkwood?
Yeah, really briefly. So for our guests who, we kind of spoke on it already, and Jeff, who's here, we've been just starting, like kind of grassroots doing this, and Tom, who you've been on email, this is Tom over here, there's Jeff. Tom's been doing some code for you guys. I've mentioned this to my students as well, but bringing everyone in the same space. Pretty impactful, teaching people how to walk again is really, really cool. And so the technology is already there, and what we're doing is we're trying to augment that and make the experience user-centric and fun and engaging for them to do therapy that can sometimes be really tedious. So really, really cool project that we're doing as well with Parkwood here in London. Cool. Yeah. Good.
Okay, we're going to begin. Before we continue, a couple more shout-outs. Craig in the back, who runs this space, we're super thankful. And Tom, who also is our full-time technician for the game program, who not only does a lot of work with the 3rd-year students, but also is working on the Diane Blake project as far as pushing the boundaries with our software, with our systems, and Unreal, and creating these virtual reality projects. So.
Use the mic. So Louse on the Loose, we're gonna bring them up and we'll look at our first game. Actually, just while they're setting up and getting acclimated to the stage, just a little more context. Again, these projects, I like to kind of think of them as kind of more so prototypes. They've been working on these projects for 10 weeks. The semester is 14 weeks long, but they pitch ideas in groups of 2. Those ideas are then selected by the panel of professors as the ones that have like the most legs, or unique, variety, challenging, whether it be design, and then design or artistically challenging, and then we'll put the right people to those teams. They then work on groups of 5 to 6 students for 10 weeks to bring something to life. And as mentioned, we use Agile and go through that full process from pre-production through. So it's really, really fast, but in the end, you get 2 pretty awesome games. So that's what you're looking at.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Hello. We are Louse on the Loose. I am Gage Lanigan. I'm Diego Gonzalez.
And I'm Armimir Pafashi.
I'm Rain Marushka.
I'm Max Armstrong.
And I'm Oliver Glazer. And with that, let's get into the general premise of our game with our opening cutscene. So in this game, you play as a louse, which is a sort of parasite. And in order to translate that into gameplay, you sort of pilot these wacky characters, each with their own abilities that revolve around these silly, googly-eyed critters that you find along your adventure. Using these, you push buttons, open platforms, and cross gaps to bring critters to your friend's birthday party because nobody showed up. With that, let's get into the initial pitch.
So Louse on the Loose was originally called Louse on the Lam, and it was originally set in a prison-based environment, with the player's main goal being to escape the prison, and the critters are also prisoners. So originally it was very surreal, backroomsy, very bright environment, and it was an isometric-based game as well, which we did end up changing to be third person as it just fit our needs a little bit better for the game.
So some immediate changes that we made was we got rid of the jail concept, as that was one of the things that we were suggested. So we changed more to the whole under the sea environment sort of setting. Another thing that we made was we updated to no longer be isometric. Instead, the camera is now third person. The player can move it around or even zoom into the characters to see much better kind of what they're doing. We also reworked the AI. We moved from using Unity Snap Mesh to instead using a manager, where it's a single script that manages all of the critters and can move them independently to try and also save resources, as well as change their behavior. In this image, they move in a crowd, but if you were to, for example, walk on a bridge, they know to walk in a straight line. If you stand on a button, they know to group together to activate the button, etc., etc. And so in our vertical size, some more changes that we decided to do. We tried to add a bit more randomization. Since this game is about so many critters being out there, we made all the different types of critters. They all share the same type of material that grabs the colors from the vertex colors and uses red as a mask to tint them. So on load time, the mesh will be randomized, and then the color will also be randomized. The corals also all share the same material. They do have a gray material that has their texture, and then on runtime, their colors can be randomized. This way, the palette can also be randomized based on the levels, or in some of the levels, they even have emission. Shells follow the same category, randomized colors based on levels. We also really wanted to nail down the look of underwater. As you can see here, we used the opaque texture to try and distort the UVs to try and convey the underwater effect. We also used a dynamic light cookie and placed it in our directional light to try and create water caustics.
Okay, so some of the changes we made after our vertical slice were largely around the environment of the game. We had issues with our modular set where there was a lot of seams and it didn't look very organic. So we completely reworked it to get a really solid walkout that had virtually no seams or any issues with the textures that we could then make look more organic later on. We also did a lot of reworks with the tileable textures in the environment. One of the main feedbacks we would get was very small changes within the textures. So we set up parameters in Substance Designer with color, normal, curvatures, ambient occlusion, pretty much anything that you would want to change in the textures so they could be polished further. We also changed a lot about the environment grounds because one of the feedbacks that we got was that it was very, very sandy. So we added a seaweed texture, some clay, some generic stone, and then some variations of the woods and other textures for props.
Yes, so user experience. We also really wanted to nail down the whole game feeling in this game. So we really wanted it to feel like you start playing a game even before you press start. As soon as you start the main menu, you see the logo come down, you see the critters bouncing around the screen. The player can actually pick them up, throw them at each other. They can bounce around. All of the buttons have their nice animations. Our level selection screen also has really nice animated buttons. When you hover over them, it shows a turnaround rotation of the levels, which is pretty nice and interactive. Our pause menu zooms out into this big blue bubble that kind of like shows the game being static. All of our menus are very nice and dynamic with animations to try and really make the player feel like they're playing a game. Going back to it, following on this same principle, one of the things that we added for debugging was a cheat menu. And as many know from gaming culture, players love finding cheat menus and playing with cheat codes. Which is why, for one, we made a cheat code guide illustrating how you can, for example, spawn critters by a specified amount, or loading scenes by typing the name of the scene, or, for example, you can enable flight mode and fly through the level, or you can unlock all the medals and trophies early if you needed to for debugging. Since we know that the player could find these, we also wanted it to make them animated and make them feel more like you're playing still part of the game. We also introduced a reward system. When you complete the game counts how many critters you ended with the level. Each level has a criteria. Based on that criteria, you can be awarded copper, silver, or gold medals. And if you score a perfect score, you are awarded a platinum medal. And then finally, our credits. To really wrap up the whole idea that this is a game through and through. When you end the game, when you end the scene, you still have a little mini game. So as you go through the credits, you read the names, you still continue to collect critters. And if you hover over the names of the developers, they will spin around.
So these are our main characters for the game. There's 3 of them that you can switch between. We have the frogfish. He is the one that collects the critters and has them follow you. Then we have the seahorse. He can pick up an individual critter and throw him a good distance across a gap or into a hanging object. And then we have the yeti crab. He grabs a whole bunch of critters all at once, rolls them into a big heavy ball, and can throw them at walls or buttons to break them. And then we have our titular louse. He doesn't do anything in terms of gameplay, but he is the mastermind behind everything. You are the louse. You are controlling everyone.
On top of this, we also have a plethora of wacky NPCs that you can interact with throughout the levels. They have their own silly art styles, their own dialogue sounds, which are fun MIDI instruments, and they also have unique, they also give tutorials sometimes, and this allows for doing tutorialization in a fun way and also giving the player another reason to look around, because you want to collect all these fun tidbits of info about the world.
So during playtesting, we had your regular bug fixes that had to be done, but some of the main issues that we ran into were when you collected critters, they would just group up on you and get stuck on things. So we changed them so that they follow into a line, and then when you interact with something like a button or a platform, that's when they group up and will follow you onto that button. We also had some puzzle clarity issues. Players weren't quite sure what buttons activated what items, so we added a wire system up in the corner there. That shows that this button activates this door or this platform. We also had some soft lock issues. The seahorse could throw a critter, and then that critter was just there now, and if you threw it somewhere that you couldn't reach it, you lost that critter. So now if a critter is thrown and it doesn't interact with anything, it comes right back to the seahorse. And then finally, you can drop the critters to leave them where they are. Originally, you would just pick the critters right back up, and that was frustrating to players. So now there's a little bit of a cooldown between dropping them and collecting them again.
With that said, let's show off the final game. So this is level 1, the Coral Corral. It takes place in a lush coral reef where you learn about the frogfish, the first playable character, critters, buttons, platforms, bridges, shark doors, all the main mechanics of the game are taught here. And with that, we had the unique opportunity to present the player with an unfamiliar space that expands as they start to familiarize themselves with it. And we do that with a mix of gated and non-gated puzzles. And what this means is that some can be accessed completely for free. You'll learn a small thing, you get a couple critters out of it, awesome. Some are a little more complex and require a couple critters as a little barrier to entry. And that way, no matter how you approach the level, it has a smooth difficulty curve the whole way through. There are some NPCs that additionally have their own little set piece puzzles to go along with them. and largely in this level, they also take on a tutorialization role. It's also worth mentioning that we have an entirely complete custom soundtrack that changes as you move through the levels, and it has a live performance from an acoustic guitar and an oboe. Throughout, we also have collectibles in each level, which show up in the ending scene if you get them in that level, which is a nice way to tie everything together in a nice little bow.
So in level 2, we introduced the seahorse. We didn't want to add all of the characters all at once and overwhelm the player, so we introduced them level by level, and then later on, you have all of the creatures and can do harder puzzles. So this level specializes with the seahorse, a lot of throwing critters, a lot of puzzles where you have to go and collect them once you've thrown them. We also introduced the geysers in this level. They are a new way to traverse the levels. They have little bubbles that come up from them, and you can ride that current up to a new level. But the critters do get stuck in them, so you have to help them out once that happens. This level is also themed after a pirate ship. So in the first level, you might have seen that you collect the treasure map. Now you are searching for the treasure, which is coming up soon. Alright, so level 3 takes place in the Sunken Kingdom, and you start off as the Yeti Crab. You basically just chuck the critters at the walls to break the bricks, just to quickly show the player how the Yeti Crab works. You also weigh up to 3 critters as the crab, so it quickly shows that as well. One of the most important things about level 3 is that it's the first level where all 3 characters are introduced. So the puzzles are a lot more simple to show what parts you need to be the frogfish, and what parts you need to be the seahorse, and what parts you need to be the crab. So for this one, you be the frogfish to bring the critter along, and then you be the seahorse to chuck the critter at the button, and then you go back to the frogfish to go to the end of the level. And then to get the present in this level, you have to throw the big critter at the sword to get it out of the stone, so then you get a really cool sword for your friend.
So level 4, the water park or the theme park level, whichever you want to call it, is the level that we wanted to focus more on the whimsical side of things. So we have procedural landmarks like the roller coaster, the slides, the carousel, that are like, not only they contribute to that overall theme, but they also guide the player. We also have multi-pathing, so the player can take either the straightforward path, or the more critters and more points kind of path. And we also have mini games in there. Ooh. we have the bowling, we have the ice tracker, and yeah, you can take a look here. And we have the one plush. This is the gift of this level. There is also an added layer of difficulty with the puzzles, so the player can have more creative ways to solve them. I'm just gonna let it run through.
And this is level 5. This is the Dead Reef. It is a little more desaturated compared to the other levels. Essentially, this level has the player using all 3 of their player forms in a bunch of different puzzles and things. You do use the Yeti Crab the most, I would say, in different variations compared to the other levels. This level also emphasizes a lot on backtracking, because the player's main goal is to get 15 critters for the final bridge. So throughout the level, you're just trying to get that amount of critters that you need to create the final bridge. This is also the present you get in this level, the sea lime balloon bouquet. Here's Mr. Jepley III. He picks up and he throws the critters, and he's mostly just an annoyance for the player. So the player has to get a large critter and roll it at Jepley in order to unlock the final area.
And then finally, the 6th level is titled The Depths. As the name suggests, you are in the depths of the ocean. To convey that, we changed the colors to be color tone to try and simulate the whole low light. Another thing is there is a lot of abyss. A lot of the puzzles are very much showcasing the void, showcasing that you're pretty much in the abyss of the depths. You see a lot of emissiveness on the corals. Using that hole, the corals are tinted per level. In this case, they get a Fresnel effect. This level, being the last one, utilizes all three of the creatures, of course, for their puzzles. You get the cheesecake as your treasure. Also another thing, we wanted to add a new particle system as well. You see there's like a little bit of lights that kind of move around to kind of try and add that depthness that you would see in underwater ocean, which works out pretty reasonably well. And then finally you make it to the end.
And with that, we can give some final thoughts, show the final scene, the credits, and take some questions. We have had a very unique opportunity to specialize working on this game. We have all managed to really play into our strengths, and on top of that, we had an amazing pitch to boot. But on top of that, we really got to focus on the feelings of this game. There is a thing permeating all of this where you can feel that shift between cute and whimsical and vast sense of scale, and it permeates through the music, the art direction, the story, the way that the gameplay feels. At a point, it started to really feel like more than the sum of its parts, and it has been a beautiful experience to work on Louse on the Loose. Thank you.
As a final note, for anyone who goes to the night version of Industry Night, if you step by any of our booths, we'll be giving away Louse on the Loose patches for as long as supplies last.
If there's any feedback and comments that you guys want to give as industry to these guys, feel free at this time.
Nice work. I have a quick one for you. So you mentioned early on how you pivoted on your camera perspective, and also how you changed going from a nav mesh to rolling your own navigation system.
Yes.
On such a short project, risk management and prioritization is huge. What was your process as a team to decide to make those big changes, and how did you approach that, and did you learn anything at the end of the project?
So in previous terms, I had already played quite a bit with building player controllers, as well as alternative navigation systems. So it was a little bit of reutilizing some of the work that I had previously done for third-person controllers, with a few minor modifications, such as adding the ability to zoom. For the isometric view, our original pitch was incredibly simple in scope. It was basically just a pill-shaped placeholder, maybe a few bridges that you could collect, and maybe just like a goal from point A to point B. So it felt like from the ground, we already had to build quite something from the ground up. So we decided what would fit best the category. What are games that we already know that are familiar? This isn't 100% like the gameplay of games like Pikmin, but it is a game where you have a lot of creatures that you collect, similar to Pikmin. And it's a game that I've played quite a lot myself, and I know that having a camera that you can move around and also put right above you helps you a lot when it comes to traversing the terrain. So that's one of the reasons why we decided as a team that it was a good idea to make that decision. Yes.
Did you guys discuss at all what you would do if you had 10 more weeks?
Oh man, another 6 levels, anybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
Louse on the Loose 2.
Louse on the Loose 2.
At the hardcore mode.
Anything that you would say, like to iterate on, guys?
Well, definitely we would love to add more interactable effects. Some of the things that we had to scrap that we really wanted to add into the game was, for example, sound effects when you're walking, particles for example, sand that would lift up. We really wanted to add, for example, an effect for critters sounding like they were scared whenever you encountered the sharp doors or whenever they were close to a ledge, so that they would know, so that the player understands why a critter is behaving a certain way. Another thing that we would like to just fix is overall, while we are proud of what we were able to accomplish for the navigation path of the critters, There are definitely a few places where it could be cleaned up. The critters, if they were to get stuck and the player walks far away, they do teleport closer to the player, but we would have liked to add a few more animations to make that feel a bit more polished. So definitely the polishing areas would have taken a lot of that work.
Thank you. Nice shirts, by the way.
Anything else? Awesome, thank you guys. Alright, Ashbound, if you wanna come on up. And they were being modest, we tried, but they did a really good job of that. Gage made all the sounds, so he's over. Thank you. Oh, really? You didn't even take any credit for it. He did all the sound effects. Doesn't matter. It was excellent. It was awesome. All your hearts. Guys, just if we could bring it down. A really, really good question here by Casey, and I'm sure it's in some of your minds as well. They're pitched in groups of 2, and there are edge cases, but very intently, kind of in the conversations that we had for lunch, when you pitch a game, it is conveyed to them that they will not be on that team. So they're given a project, they may work on a project that they don't like. The messaging of that is when you start in industry, you may be working on the game that you're not passionate about. You should be passionate about the process of development and making the game, and owning that and making it your own. So these games are not theirs, they don't take ownership of them. They're given a project and then own from there.
Wow. Good. Okay, amazing. Wow, it is so stressful, exciting, exhausting to be up here in front of you all, and what an exciting term it has been to finally make it here. I'm Jonathan Braun.
I'm Marjan Kai.
I'm Craig Gondelsroel.
I'm Kimberly Anderson.
I'm Lucas Daniels. And I'm Joshua Blakely.
And we are Ashbound!
The original pitch for Ashbound was a 2.5D puzzle platformer with 3D isometric events. The game focus was more on environment interactions to defeat enemies, open up pathways, or solve puzzles. And this was all set in a land that was covered with ice and snow.
And for the original story, we didn't know what Ashbound was. So we were wondering, what was an Ashbound? And so we decided you were the Ashbound. You were a fire monk, and your goal is to find the source and defeat the source of this blizzard that is plaguing your village.
The original pitch that we were given was incredibly strong, but unfortunately it was entirely built in C#. So the first step that we had to do going into production was rebuilding it entirely using visual scripting. And as doing so, we found that we wanted to focus more on combat rather than puzzles and platforming. As a result of that, we decided to focus on enemy interaction and combat interaction. To start off, we want to simplify the amount of enemies, having 3 distinct types, which we will get into afterwards. And on top of that, we decided to change the camera from 2.5D isometric to a full dolly cam system using camera events to set locked states for the combat areas.
Going into the game adjustments for visually, we switched from an icy tundra environment to an environmental progression up a mountain. And instead of an exploring style environment, we decided to switch to a linear progression. In addition to that, we also switched from open combat in the environment to closed combat zones.
A huge decision early on was the implementation of the terrain tool. The terrain tool allowed us to optimize our workflow a lot better with the placement of painting foliage and rocks right directly onto the terrain, as well as the painting layer system, much like the vertex painting. And it just allowed us to really give that push of an organic environment, which is kind of hard to do.
Moving on to concepts. In the concepting stage, we were planning what exactly our environmental progression would look like. And so we decided to go with, you start at a grassy covered village, and then slowly moving up a snow-covered mountainous forest with rune elements towards the end.
Alongside our environmental concepts, we also made the top-downs of our levels, which helped us to set and discuss the locations of the enemies, checkpoints, puzzles, and of course, where the player will be unlocking their next ability. And of course, when talking about the hero concept assets, here we have our key assets being the meditation podium, the checkpoint, and the player itself. Getting these assets concepted early helped us to define our art direction, as well as to better give us the picture of our art style, team chemistry.
Now on to playtesting. Playtesting was huge for us. We had very valuable feedback in terms of player guidance, balance changes, cuttable features, and mechanic polish. And of course, everyone's favorite, we had bugs, tons of bugs. Most notably was the fireball bug that would solve every single puzzle and defeat every enemy in a level in one button.
On top of all the bugs, we found a lot of ways that we could polish our game, primarily when it came to the mechanics. For instance, the fireball, despite the nuke, we found that it was used way too much during the playtesting. So the first iteration on that was create a 3-charge system, making the player have to pace themselves during combat and allowing them to slow down. And another one, the flamethrower, now dealing a cone of damage, allowing for area, control, and damage, rather than just a straight line, which made it feel a lot more balanced compared to the other ones. Another big one was the enemy polish and cutting features. Jeff's favorite, cutting features. It was great, it was fun. The first feature that we cut was the meditation podium. Sorry, one of the main things that we got from Jeff was to breathe. The first thing that we cut was the meditation podium. Originally, we had scoped way too far, seeing that the meditation podium would be an interactable object, making the player transport to a separate scene, allowing them a little tutorial area to practice their abilities. We realized that that was way too much, way too quickly, so we instead decided to go with a brief video tutorial, which you will see later on during the play testing. On top of that, we also decided to simplify the enemies. During the combat, we realized that the enemies were way too complicated and a lot of people didn't fully understand them. So, keeping their complexity, but lowering the amount of moveset that they had allowed them to be distinct, but not too overpowered.
Following the playtest, we decided to double down on one of our strongest points, that being the visuals. We decided to better guide the player using the light sources such as on the lampposts, braziers, or the wall torches, as well as the path textures painted on the terrain, as well as putting numerous hours in polishing and getting overall the cohesiveness and the visual to the next level.
2D animations were a big part of our game polish, and the 2D cutscenes help us tie in the story with our game, and also the loading and death screens help make our game feel more complete.
Reaching the latter half of production, we really wanted to focus on sound implementation to really make the combat feel punchy and impactful. And to showcase this, we have the Ice Crystal Necromancer attack and the player's fireball.
I think it's muted from the last one.
Moving on to the final mechanics that made it into the game, we wanted to nail down 2 areas, combat and movement. So with the movement, we have the basic double jump and a dash, offering a wider range and faster traversal of the environment. And then the combat, you start out with the 3-hit melee combo. Sorry. You start out with the 3-hit melee combo of a punch kick. And then you sooner unlock the flamethrower that was said to be the cone, short range and just incremental damage to people in front of you.
In later levels, we also introduced the aforementioned reworked fireball. On top of that, the Molotov, which has stayed relatively the same throughout the entire production, being a ranged ability that allows you to have height variation in your attacks. And a lot of the final mechanics that we introduced were the ice hazards. These are objects that are placed throughout the levels that deal damage to the player when getting close and do a slight slow and can be destroyed using the fire abilities. On top of that, we also have the burnable objects. When igniting them and standing close to them, the player will rejuvenate mana, allowing them to continue using their fun fire abilities.
So starting off with our opening cutscene, it shows the village being attacked by ice monsters, and it also introduces our main character.
So level 1 set in the village needs to teach the controls, the mechanics, and all the important assets that you will see throughout the game. So first up, we have the melee attack tutorial where you break the burnable objects and kind of just open up your path more. Then it teaches you the jump and the double jump, just right here. Into the checkpoint and the dash tutorials. And then onto the introduction of the combat areas. The combat areas are all throughout our game and are the only spots where you can fight enemies and use your abilities against them. So here we have the basic ice stomping, where it's just melee run and just kind of scary in numbers kind of vibe. And the combat area will complete when all enemies inside are dead. And then you see here is the introduction of the flamethrower, and that is done at the meditation podium that is outlined in white. And then on to the brazier puzzle, just kind of to cap off the level.
Moving on to level 2, it introduces the fireball ability and the 3 charge states. Level 2 also introduces a pressure plate puzzle where you must melt the ice in order to drop a heavy object onto a pressure plate to open the door. Level 2 also shows you how you can use the fireball to complete long-range puzzles that you would not be able to reach otherwise using your normal melee attack. Finally, moving on to the combat zone, we introduce 2 enemies in this level, the Necromancer and the Golem. The Necromancer is a ranged enemy that spawns more ice zombies as well as an ice spike ground attack. The Golem enemy is a tankier enemy that throws ice balls and also does an AoE ground stop.
Moving on to level 3, as you move further up the mountain to find the Cryomancer, you will go through the mountain pass. This level introduces the Molotov as shown here, and as mentioned before, it allows you to activate puzzles that are in hard to reach places, as you can see here, activating the brazier on the cliff, and also create an area of damage inside the combat zones. In level 3, my apologies, in level 3 we also lightly introduce the player to the platforming as it becomes more prevalent in the later levels. And also showcasing the Molotov in the combat zones, dealing consistent damage in an area.
And so getting to the next level, the level 4 Rune Keep. Here we are not introducing any new mechanics, but we're increasing the difficulty using the larger amount of enemies as well as more longer levels, more condensed and claustrophobic combat zones. At this stage, player usually would try to experiment with the abilities and maybe find the best fit for them, because most of them are pretty strong. As well as still using the Molotov to try to solve the brazier puzzles. The Molotov is actually my favorite one. And of course, after the second comment area, we have the platforming that is more vertical than the usual to further emphasize the narrative design of us reaching from the down Ignis Village to up to the Slavers Summit will be the next level. As you can see, also all ice hazards are interactable and meltable by any fire abilities. They are pretty popular amongst the levels.
Finally moving on to our last level, level 5. This is where you finally reach near the top of the mountain, and it also introduces a new variant of the pressure plate puzzle. Similar to the level, no, there is no new mechanics introduced into this level. However, the difficulty is scaled, as this is the last level. To just add a layer of complexity to our platforming, we also added the multiple ice obstacle in front of the platforming to make the player use their abilities while platforming. After you beat the last combat zone, you have to activate 2 puzzles before the door opens.
After passing through the final door, you finally make your way to the Cryomancer, lighting them on fire, ridding the world of frozen blight that they've plagued it with. Moving into our assets, throughout production we've developed a ton of assets and of course the characters. That being the player character there on the left, the Ashbound, the basic melee grunt, the ice zombie, the ranged summoner, the necromancer, the golem, being the stomper, ranged enemy as well, and of course the cryomancer.
On to the visual effects. With the visual effects, we really wanted to make the player feel powerful and have a clear impact on the world around them. And we also wanted to convey the sense of good versus evil. And so anything to do with the player is red and has like fire. So the player also has like the red outline. And then all the enemies, their abilities are blue. You know, ice that hurts you, also blue, of course. And then they have then the enemies also have a blue outline shader.
We produced multiple modular kits that helped us to make clean level borders, as well as keep our combat very focused and condensed, as well as making the level design control organic and much less artificial.
Moving on to our foliage and environmental assets, they were very important to our game to help not only help fill our scenes, but also make it feel alive. The assets also follow our environmental progression. As you can see, the assets both have a regular and snow variants. And also, we also outsourced a shader that makes our foliage sway in the wind, further enhancing our environment. 2D assets also really helped with our player guidance, specifically the 2D indicators that really helped with combat clarity.
To end it all off, what is everything that we learned throughout development of Ashbound? The biggest one was early iteration and play testing. Allowing the combat and abilities to feel well balanced really helped round out our game and was incredibly important to do early on. On top of that, excessive amounts of communication. Having dozens and dozens of Discord channels or whatever your communication methods may be to log and keep track every step of the way. And the most important step that I hope each and every one of you can take away from this night, make t-shirts with your team.
We did.
Thank you all so much for listening.
Any comments you guys
Yeah,
have?
I want to give some feedback actually. So, it's really easy, as Jeff is saying, you know what I mean? You look like you're about to collapse right here. It's a very good job, by the way. It's impressive. So, like, congratulations. It's not easy shipping games, right? One point I was gonna say as well, like when you say about like simplifying AI, that was a good point, by the way. It's a mistake that even better developer keep doing because they need AI. Too complicated and other people don't understand. I was gonna ask a question in regard to combat actually. You guys also like considering like hit react. Is there any screen shake going on right here?
There is a very subtle screen shake. We wanted to keep it as subtle as possible because originally it was way too distracting. We were also going to have a freeze frame effect, but in the end result, it ended up stuttering the game too much.
Okay. But like consider like maybe certain things like for example like hit stop for example, like really add the punchiness into the combat, and I don't see any hit reaction on the enemy at all right now. It's like everybody's moving and not messing anything except when they die. But like yeah, that's about it.
I can have a follow-up with that. It's about the locomotion of the character. You know, it's like a kind of fighting game, have a lot of interaction and stuff. So take the time to polish, especially the locomotion for the player and enemies. That can be like a really nice touch to the game.
I have a question about the shader absorbs. Who can respond? Who came up with that idea and how to?
So it's actually a shader that one of our classmates made, and we all kind of just share all of our like assets. Actually, like Diego, that was talking on last on the loose, he actually created that shader.
Interesting. Well done.
Was it Vertex based then?
I think it's Vertex, like swaying, but I'm not 100% sure.
You can answer.
It's vertex displacement.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense. Nice job.
It's on the video now. Okay.
Yeah, one feedback I have is like, you put so much effort in creating the characters, but it is a bit hard to read their characteristics a little bit. I do see that you've added a shader that kind of creates like an outline, like rim, like effect to them to make them more visible, at least in the combat aspect. But in terms of just working a bit more on the lighting to make sure that like the main character is easier to see, so you can actually fully experience the hard work you put into it, would be great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Good work.
We are going to switch a little bit. Dave Latour, who is the coordinator of the animation program. The audience, yes. The animation program is a 2-year program, unlike the game design program, which is 3 years. Within that program, even though it's called animation, a lot of students, there is a lot of crossover as far as the skills and the tools and their desire to create other things besides animation. So within the reels, there are character sculpts, character animations, assets that our students do. So not everyone ends up wanting to be an animator. People decide to concentrate their creativity in other things as well. One thing I just want to say that this is just a little snippet of some of the students' animation work. This evening, for any of you who are staying this evening, on the 4th floor in the back room, the animation students have their full reels, all their full work for you to be able to see. Enjoy.
Oh. Why I use a knife?
Thank you so much. Sure. So how'd you fall in?
Oh, I was making a wish, of course.
In a dried up well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been fun, but I'm off now.
Great. Where are we going? Oh, they wouldn't. They wouldn't put bees in Minecraft. I am 30 or 40 years old and I do not need this.
Okay, look, I'm fine with you fighting other people if you want to do that, but what we have is special.
If there's a spider nesting in there, you're never gonna find it till it lays eggs and all the babies spill out.
What's wrong with you?
Don't listen to her. Nothing she gives away is worth anything, especially advice.
I don't know. Families are tricky. You guys know what I mean, right?
some more of the VGD work. But in the back, in behind there, guys, there are drinks. I think some of the tarts made it down. So students, if you want to take those tarts out, you can do it. There's a bathroom out around here. If you need to really go, you can go up one floor as well, and there's bathrooms up there as well, or down, yeah. But we'll take 10 minutes here, and then all right. Thank you. But what we can understand to get to that point inside of VGD, animation's focus is delivering on that. So ours is more on props, environments, assets, that whole pipe in the design as well. So without further ado, we'll take a look at the VGD demo reel. All the sound. Kennedy, are you here? No. Kennedy is not here. So Kennedy is a master's student from Western. And she did some composition for some of our students, and all the music you hear in the background is 100% not AI, fully generated by our wonderful friend Kennedy at Western. These again were students for 14 weeks, where they would come from concept and through Brandon's awesome guidance, be able to make these assets. Now, there were in other classes as well. Sergey, where? Sergey. There you are. Yeah. All the guys are like, don't talk about them. Again, awesome work in the class as well. So these are pieces that our students did on top of making those games. So we're cracking the whip pretty hard, and they're pulling out awesome stuff. So really cool. Next game, if you guys would like to come up.
Hello, everyone. We are Child of Eclipse, and we're here to present our game to you today. So we'll start off with our storyline and after introduction and strategy. So, Child of Eclipse. My name is Graham Miller. I was a product owner, and I was involved in a lot of the scripting.
My name is Carly Myers. I was the art lead for our game, and I was responsible for all of our 2D assets, some 3D assets, and our VFX work as well.
My name is Adam Ridsdale, and I did a lot of work with the scripting through our game. I did a lot of the animations.
My name is RJ Fletcher. I was the Scrum Master during the development of our game and handled mainly 3D environment asset creation.
My name is Michael O'Connor. I was responsible for asset creation and textures.
And I'm the gameplay designer and also the 3D asset artist of this game.
So actually, interesting note about Cheng Yu, he was involved in the original pitch, one of the exception. So here's a story. Long ago, the ancestors of the village worshipped the goddess of the moon. Through their worship of the goddess, they gained great power. Elders of the village grew greedy for that power and imprisoned the goddess deep within the great temple, locking her away to secure their power forever. The villagers were ever cursed for this sin. The only hope for the cursed village was a child of prophecy, who, after eons passed, was finally born to the village. One who could finally access the ancient powers. One who could finally free the village from its timeless curse. The village elders led the child, Olin, to the temple to free the imprisoned goddess. The road to the temple was long and arduous. And after many dangerous paths, at last they arrived to the Temple of the Eclipse. Now the child of prophecy must enter the temple and free the goddess from her chains. So our game is Child of the Eclipse. We are a slower paced puzzle action platformer. The player will find their way through the game in the Temple of the Eclipse to find the imprisoned goddess within. Avoiding traps and puzzles and using mechanisms along the way, powered by their godlike powers that they are endowed with. Their ultimate goal is to reach the goddess of the moon and decide her fate.
Okay, so for the main mechanic of our game, has the main character swapping between three states, which are sun, moon, and eclipse. By left-clicking on these nodes that are around each level, the player is able to swap them and using that to solve puzzles. One of the main ways we use this is if the player is an opposite state of, let's say, a wall, they'll be able to pass through it, but if they are the same, they will collide with the wall and not be able to pass through. And one way we expand upon this mechanic is by being able to swap the states of pieces of the environment. So in this example, there's a ball that falls to a track. The ball is a certain state, and the track must be the same in order for the ball to go through, or else it'll fall and you have to restart. It also expands with different obstacles that will show along the way in order to solve more puzzles, and also to power other mechanisms.
So NPCs are one of the most important parts of our game. The first NPC that you'll run into is the little pottery people. They are harmless, they just follow you around, but their main objective or their main purpose is to weigh down buttons to open doors. So all the NPCs, the major NPCs, are able to be frozen in place with either moon or sun state. And this is just a very nice introduction in the first level to show the player in a very harmless way how that can be used, because it will be iterated on in future levels. The next NPC that we introduce is the Golem. Now, very similarly to the pottery people, they follow you around just harmlessly, but they're all structural. So this first example, we use him to access another part of the level, but in future puzzles, he's used as well to finish bridges and complete paths and whatnot, so like ball tracks and bridges to get to different areas as well. They're very versatile. One of the obstacles that you're going to run into along the way is the fire traps. You need to be the opposite state to pass through them. In level 4, about halfway through, we introduce them in a very safe environment. You're able just to take your time and walk through, but here in level 6, for example, they become a little more complicated. There's more reaction-based puzzles once the player's acclimated to the game and its mechanics. And then the final NPC that we introduced is the mummy. So these mummies will actually chase and attack you. They're the only lethal NPC in the game, and they're introduced fairly late, level 5 and 6. Once the player kind of knows how NPCs work, they'll follow you, but this is kind of a switch up. But they also work very similarly, where they weigh down buttons and you're able to freeze them in place to get to new areas.
So we here have some of our NPCs in a little bit of a showcase. On the right side, we have our main character, Olin, who swaps between the 3 different states, Eclipse, Sun, and Moon, as well as the Pottery people, which have a Sun and Moon state as well. And then finally, our Mummy in a neutral state, which has, in the game, they have a little symbol above their head, which is their stopping power, which is how you know whether or not you can stop them at all. Otherwise, they continue to chase. So here we have a further showcase of some more of our assets. We have the staff, which the character Olin carries around. We wanted to really showcase the different states that they swap between. So we put an aura on them, we put colors on their cloak, we put a staff that swaps states in their hands. We really tried to go all in on showing the player what state they are and what reaction they're going to get out of any given interaction, as it is very central. We have the Mega Door, which is our gatekeeping source for the game, as well as fire traps in the 3 different states. We don't mention this, but well, now the Eclipse state, which is the furthest to the right, is just generally damaging fire. You can't pass through it, so you must complete a mechanism to turn it off. We have our Goddess, who is imprisoned in a statue state. That's at the end of level 6. This is the one that you free when you finally make it to the end of the game. You get to choose, ultimately, her fate. And then finally, we have our little golem guy who's a bit covered up by the bridge. However, he's just so cute, I can't get enough of him. And he is largely used as a structural movement in the game.
And then here are some of the animations that we made. So the 2 on top are for the main character. It's an idle and a run animation. And then on the bottom, there's the lizard, which didn't get mentioned in the NPCs, but he's just a little guy who scurries around each level, who runs away from the players. It's one of my favorite parts of the game that I was really happy to animate for, as well as the mummy with him chasing the player and attacking him.
So here we have a couple of level showcases. We're just going to show bits and pieces of them. In level 1, we do a very basic showcasing of how the mechanic interact actually works. It's all based on these bright blue and yellow colors, so you know you can interact with them. Your cursor is the actual interaction point, so it's a WASD and a space for jump, as well as clicking on the different things. And you can see that they pass through based on if they are the same state, they collide, and if they are opposite, they fall through. So it's a simplified sort of swapping puzzle that prompts the player to think about what state anything is at any given time. In level 2, we expand on that with just a little bit more intricacy, still very low danger. We're trying to take a more relaxed pace in this game. This involves a combination lock where you have to get the correct state ball into the correct corner. And you can see down here at the bottom that it will unlock the gateway to go forward. In level 3, this is actually that puzzle that RJ was mentioning before, where you draw the golems over onto these four panels, and if you stop them by turning them to the moon state, which we explained in some tutorials, they will not only create a bridge, but they will also turn off those fire traps, which allow the player to progress forward. Level 4 has a greater degree of variety. We have many of the mechanics introduced at this point, so we're just varietizing. There's mazes where you can see if you are in the opposite state, you will be able to pass through. And it's largely involved in just working your way through, swapping these states. It's a bit of a thinker game. In level 5, we finally introduced the mummy character, which is, we wanted to lead it slowly into the dangerous realm. We provide danger as we go forward, but now it is truly aggressive. It's a one-hit kill because we provide you infinite lives. And it's the same as most of the other NPCs, where you draw them onto a 4-panel and swap their state to a specific state that's shown over their heads, and that allows you to progress forward. And then in level 6, we showcase all of the stuff. You can see that the walls have become much more glowy because as we progress through the temple, we go from day into night. So we added emissives as you go through. This is a permeability puzzle, as well as a state swapping sort of pinball idea, where you have to get the ball in these 3 ball baskets here, as you see. When you get it in, it drops either the wall or provides a way forward on the platform. We showed this earlier. This is the fire trap room in level 6, where it kind of nails down the difficult reaction-based swapping, as well as some small platforming. And you can see there at the top of the screen is the first decision that the player will make to unlock the binds of this goddess in prison. If you choose Moon, you will free her, and if you choose Sun, you will destroy her. I'll get on that more later. For now, we also have the proverbial last boss of the game, which is just a more intense, tight-knit mummy puzzle, where the player needs to react properly to suddenly reacting mummy characters, and then you make your final rise up to the goddess, where you make your final choice. So, most of our game is involving these different states, 2 different sides, sun and moon. The eclipse state is largely neutral, so we decided to provide to the player 2 different endings based on what you choose. Moon, the moon goddess, will free her, release her from her bindings. Sun, however, activates the long time dormant defense mechanisms against such a thing. The ancestors of these people were quite greedy for their power and did not want to let it go. So if you choose Moon, you will have the good ending, and if you choose Sun, you will have the bad ending. Note, it is more serious in note or in tone. We wanted to make this more of a artistic, serious ending rather than just a zany fun game. We wanted to make it a little bit more of an art expression. So here we have the bad ending. You activate it with Sun, and you destroy the goddess. And you see as her power resonates through the sky and to the moon, Alwyn realizes he may have made a mistake. The goddess statue smolders in ruin. And don't destroy the goddess of the moon, guys. You might do something you regret. And behold, the end of the night sky. You have effectively ended the universe, and the power is wrenched from you, and you realize, as it leaves you, you have made a mistake. Full of grin, I know. That's why we're ending on the good ending. So, if you choose instead Moon, you power the moon, and it shatters your chains. She is now free. She rises up in her true form out of the statue, ascending to the moon. Alwyn then is able to travel home and is met by the village with a warm welcome home. And if you collect enough coins, which is a little light thing, you get the extra good ending where you go home not only successful but also rich.
so for our post-mortem, so some things that went wrong, some things that went right, a lot of things that got fixed, and how the game ended up to how it did for today. The original pitch that we were given was called Color Shift Path. It was the same mechanic where you swap between two different colors. In this case, it was red and blue. Except this game, it was themed around a cyberpunk with a kind of comic book, cartoonish art style. So when we were given this pitch, we were advised to change pretty much everything about it except for the main swapping mechanic. So instead of a cyberpunk theme, we went for a Mayan Aztec temple theme. Instead of comic book, it was more, we went like painterly and kind of vibrant. Throughout the game, we learned a lot about making puzzle games. One, puzzles are really hard to make, and we struggled a lot trying to come up with good puzzle ideas, but I think we are satisfied with how a lot of the puzzles turned out in our game. As well, we decided for a lot of the assets to go for a blocky style for like structural ones, a lot of like big bricks like there was in ancient Aztec civilizations. And then we went for a more like flowing and less blocky shapes for like all the magic and the foliage to add a good contrast for our game.
So for the result, we think the game came out fantastic. It is a brightly colored and relaxed puzzle game. We think the style is really strong. There are multiple times in the project where sometimes we would kind of waver off, but we made sure that we kept very strict to the art style right up to the end. We're happy with the main mechanic because it's super expandable. We just, even when we first got the pitch, we had so many ideas that we never really got to put in. We were very inspired by Breath of the Wild shrines. And so if you kind of think about that, lots of mechanisms, moving pieces. If this game was to be expanded on beyond just the final project, there's so many more things that we could add in. It's really like an endless amount of things for this mechanic. We found that the game is it being low stakes makes it accessible. We didn't make it like super easy. The mechanic's very easy to pick up and learn and start to get used to. And the way that we iterate slowly, I think it's just very accessible and welcomes all variety of players at various skill levels. And we feel like this was really a labor of love to work on. This project had a lot of pivots, a lot of moments where things would break. If anyone's used GitHub and Unity, everyone in this program knows that things like to just explode sometimes. So that's always fun to deal with. But there was lots of times where we had an idea and it didn't quite work. We had to go back and we would remix the idea and we'd do something sort of similar. And especially in the last week, right before finals, I don't know what happened, but we locked in. We locked in like crazy and got so much added in, and we are just super proud of where the game's at today.
And I just want to say too that I'm super proud of my team. We all worked so hard in the last 2 weeks. I think we put in 160 hours in the last 2, literally, just to make sure it was ready for today. Everybody put in a lot of work, and we had to, speaking to the mechanics of the game, we had to rein it in several times where we had so many options for this and that sort of swapping mechanic that people were just making up new things and putting it, and I had to be like, whoa, slow down, like we can't just keep going and go. That's a good thing though, that we have so many expandable options for this mechanic. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll make a comment. I thought the choice of the aesthetic was great for the Aztecs. You know, it makes such jive so well with the stellar theme, right? I thought just on the narrative level that since you added this like universe, you know, destroying choice at the end, it would have been great to see sort of woven into the entire puzzle experience where you're having to, as you solve the puzzles and you go through the levels, you have to sort of understand the nature of this goddess, or you should do with her, right?
There were discussions while we were in early production about making Moon exclusively good and Sun exclusively bad. We thought it didn't really jive with the whole idea that the universe is all in sort of one kind of thing. There was a lot of the like real Mayan culture, and the Sun's not bad in real time. So we sort of, or Mayan and Aztec culture. So we sort of, we were in a moment where we had to make a choice whether it's a mechanic or a like storyline thing. And so we kind of erred on the side of mechanics.
Also, although it wasn't showcased today, we do have dialogue throughout the game from the goddess, and she kind of is pushing the player to choose between Sun and Moon. So she's kind of like, come save me, but I hate your people for trapping me here. So you're kind of like wavered that way.
There's a lot of narrative where it gives you kind of an uncertainty right up till the end, in which case in the 6th level she's kind of starts begging you like, please don't make this choice. Like, it's a bad idea, man. And so it lends the story to itself at least.
So you did.
We did think about it a little bit. Yes, absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say like it looked really great. Like the stylistic choices were very good. Like really resonates with the whole Aztec feel. That's awesome. Just one probably like one critique, or like maybe because I was watching and maybe not playing, I kind of noticed that I got confused as to what state you were in. Right? Were you in Moon? Were you in Sun? I didn't know. I think like maybe just as like a suggestion to maybe kind of have the main player be that state change. I would say like maybe the star flips. Maybe there's some kind of effect. Maybe there's something.
It does.
We do have a VFX that does show the state swaps as well as the texture change on the character, and we also have a UI that shows in the corner. It's a little gear that like turns.
We left that out from the presentation because we wanted it.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
We also have the cursor also changes color and the target of like, so when you're aiming at stuff, the target itself changes to what the state was.
This is just worth it.
I would say this is a fantastic work. I know it's not a lot of time for a lot of polishing, but it is, I'm impressed. I want to say that in advance. One suggestion I have lighting-wise, as you're using the keys, which is fun, it's like this one on the moon. It will be good when you go through the last stages that we see variations between like the global illumination. So, for example, you go from the teeny pretty light, and then you can define like the moon, the position between the moon and the sun as an eclipse, right? Because that's actually what like the idea when the company goes, like it's gonna change that. So maybe I get confused where is the shadow or where is the sun. More playing with environment, more than character.
So we had more time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. More time. Yeah. This is polishing your state, but you said arty.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of great spec here. I'm just saying this
It's
is
really
very,
all heard visually.
Yeah, this is very impressive, and I just will your battle arty. I think you have done more than that. So yeah, and storytelling, everything camera chose to tell. I was engaged.
It's also very balanced, right?
Yes.
Like there might be some visual things that maybe was a bit less good just from seeing it as a presentation, but in terms of you utilizing each state, it felt balanced. Like it wasn't like sun you were using more than moon and things like that. So overall, that was really great.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh yeah.
So maybe I have a small comment. So congratulations on the game first. I was quite impressed by overall, your direction and the color palette and stuff like that. So it was pretty interesting and nicely done. One small comment that I may have, if I can. So obviously you're doing a stylized game, and stylization means systemic simplification. And one thing I did notice is that maybe the statue of the Empress, or right? It doesn't quite fit the style of the rest. Like if you look at the main character. So in the future, when you're making a game, right, to try to think of that the simplification, that systemic simplification will apply to everything in the game. So it has to be cohesive. Right?
That's
but
one
otherwise,
of the biggest challenges of making a game is making sure we're all on the same page. I truly appreciate how challenging that kind of thing is. And hundreds of people in a company all making the same thing just blows my mind at this point.
And if I can add one thing,
yeah, for sure.
This issue of having a site that is cohesive throughout the game, it applies to indie games and it applies to AAA games. And I will tell you that there are some games with hundreds of millions of dollars where they run into that type of issue anyways.
I just have one question, kind of related to that. But we also, I also noticed like the mommy character was also quite stylistically different. I don't know, did you create it yourself or is that an asset? Oh, you created it. Yeah, it felt a little bit more like cohesive because you put a shader effect in the game, so it was a bit flatter. But just seeing it right, you know, like next to the other NPCs and the main character, it did feel like a different style.
It's much more high fidelity.
Yeah.
We discussed that at length actually, and we had sort of conversations back and forth about changing it. The reason we ultimately left it is because we thought it looked very obviously like scary.
Oh yeah,
It's got glowing eyes and it's tall and thin and gangly. Certainly keeping it towards
itself,
the
it was really well done. It just once again I think with it.
Anyone else?
Quick question. The final choice the player makes, I'm just curious if they understand the consequences of the choice before they're making it.
They are led on by those dialogues that we
Yeah, the
discussed.
dialogue completely like explains that almost.
Okay, so you know if you're killing her
Absolutely,
or saving
yeah.
the world when you make that choice. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And especially in the 6th level, most of the mechanics are re-explained in visual hieroglyphics. We had to cut down the presentation so we could go through.
Yeah. Since it's a puzzle game, it's a bit lengthier than normal, so we did have to cut down a lot. And actually, to fully answer your question, I'm pretty sure the last dialogue you ever hear from the goddess is, "If you choose sun, I fear what may happen." So,
Yeah.
you know.
Especially in the 6th level, there is a lot leading you on with this choice. Anybody else? Thanks very much.
Okay, is this thing on? Can you hear guys hear me? Hello. Okay. Welcome to Crown of Stone Industry Day 2026. So, the basis of our game. Oh, I'm Jackson Kavar.
My name is Marcine.
I'm Jack Britton.
I'm Heather Cox.
Washirin Tesuka, Kit.
Okay, so the basis of our game follows the story of Echo, an earthbender, on his journey to compete for a trial for the Crown of Stone, a powerful artifact hidden in the heart of a volcano.
So, our original pitch followed Echo, a young earthbender, into the heart of a volcano in the center of a mountain. The enemies were very bandit-esque, and we decided to kind of pivot that pretty early on into a more tropical island theme. Originally, it was a 2.5D side-scroller that we decided to change into a more third-person camera view, as well as there was a very big breadth of mechanic. There were 4 main abilities, each of which had a powered-up and unpowered-up state that we decided to kind of shrink down a bit. So for our first chunk of time, we spent a lot of time brainstorming.
So yeah, we did a lot of concept sketches for the mechanics. As you can see, we have all of them displayed there. Because the pitch had so many mechanics, we had a lot of different directions that we could have taken the game in. Ultimately, after a lot of brainstorming, we decided to focus on the 2 that we thought were the strongest, which is a stone pillar and a stone fist, which we'll get to in a little bit.
As mentioned before, we changed the direction of the game from being a more desert vibe to a more tropical island. Initially, it went inside of the mountain into caves with crystals and stuff, and instead we decided to pivot toward heading up a volcano. This then led to us having 2 different color palettes for our game moving forward, which then gave us the linear path of our levels going further and further up the mountain before eventually ending up inside the volcano at the very end. Populating our levels are our enemies and our main character here. We spent a lot of time focusing on clarity with shapes and designs to make sure the player with the camera angle knew what enemy they were looking at and that they didn't blend in too much with the background. We also pivoted from the bandits to the pirates, as Jack mentioned before, and similarly we gave the island its own defense in the form of the different rock enemies that you'll see later on in the game. At about week 3, we had our vertical slice, and we noticed when looking at all of our assets that we kind of had 2 different styles going. So we decided to pivot towards the bright saturation that the plants and wood kit had at the time. And doing a little quick sketch over, we decided that we were going to pivot fully in that direction going forward with the rest of our assets.
At that same time, during our vertical slice, we had a few mechanics that just didn't work well. We had these big movable blocks that you would grab onto and pull around, but they were slow, boring, and unintuitive to use. We also had a locked camera, which didn't fit well for designing levels. As well, we had this giant stone fist that would push you up in the air and throw you up. That just didn't work well with what we were planning.
And this mechanic that we designed to make keep in our game. First one is stone pillar and use that as a platforming. And the second one is a blue crystal when Echo can destroy and drain the mana and restore health back.
We also have a climbable vine wall because with testing we found that climbing long vertical surfaces with pillars was a little bit slow. So we really wanted to smooth the gameplay out and make it more intuitive for the player. And we also have some environmental hazards in the form of rocks that are falling and tumbling down the mountain. These will damage the player on contact, and you can also block them with your pillars.
Instead of those big movable blocks, we decided to split it into 2 different mechanics. One being a crystal puzzle where you pick up these crystals with your giant rock arms and can run them around to different pedestals to power different magical objects around the island. And the other being a punchable totem puzzle that you have to punch and they slide along the ground until they hit a wall, or you can summon a pillar behind them to stop them in their path. We also have some hazards that are introduced later into the game, such as a lava pool that you have to plug up so it goes down and get to what's underneath it, and these rock bugs which will destroy your pillars after you've placed them on a wall, so it makes platforming a bit difficult in the later levels. We also have combat in our game. Originally, it started out with 2 main attacks, a light attack that's used when you don't have your fists summoned, and a heavy attack that's used while you have them. We decided to add a spin attack as well, because we felt like it needed some more damage for when you get swarmed by enemies. And then about halfway through, we felt that we weren't using the pillar at all in combat, our other main mechanic. So we decided to, if you summon a pillar underneath an enemy, it will summon a spike, dealing a small bit of area damage around them. As well as you can block with your fists and the pillars, stunning enemies, or allowing you to deal damage easier, or with the golems, it fully stuns them, dropping a crystal on their back onto the ground, allowing you to actually damage them. The player controller was a really big focus in our game. Early on, we knew we wanted to have a very fun movement system. So using the blend trees and layer masks within Unity, we were able to effectively blend both movement and attack animations together. As you can see with the GIF there, both the top and bottom of the body moving at the same time, as well as combining that with a floating rigid body controller that allowed our player to seamlessly move over small bumps, rocks, without getting stuck on things. We were able to get a lot of animations in quickly because we were allowed to use the mocap rooms that we have at the school. We had a great time using that, and we were able to come up with a pretty great system moving from the motive software that we have upstairs into Blender, which we were able to clean up the keys and bring it back into Unity pretty quickly.
Combining both of our mocap data and our models that we made, we were able to add a lot of life and personality to all of our characters. But unfortunately, we don't have 16 legs, so our bugs had to be animated using keyframe animation with rigs that we made ourselves. Similarly, the hands follow the same structure of having its own rig and animations that follow with Echo's movements throughout the game as he does different actions.
And of course, throughout all of it, bugs. So many bugs. Here's kind of our greatest hits of some of the ones we've had. Just throughout the entire time, you're always squashing them, and it's fun to keep track of, and by keeping them in kind of like a condensed place, we're able to knock them off the list pretty quickly, so we didn't have any major ones affecting the game for too long.
So, moving on to the main menu. The main menu went through many iterations. However, we wanted to keep it rendered in real time, as well as having each level have their own environment. That kind of shows you what you're going to get into before you play the level.
Alright, so moving.
Starting off the game, the player is greeted with the opening cutscene, which establishes the context of Echo's arrival to the island.
Forgot we have a cutscene. Anyways, moving on to level 1, we're going to get into some gameplay now. So Echo has arrived at the island, and his goal is to get to the top of the mountain and claim the crown of stone. So this being the beginning level, we really wanted to tutorialize the basic mechanics through gameplay and level design. So you can see we introduced the climbable pillars, some of the basic combat, and also you'll see the climbing walls. This is where we introduce some of the environmental hazards to the player, and they're able to block it with pillars to get up to the top safely. Midway through the level, we get into an enemy gauntlet, where the player is tasked with defeating all the enemies in the area before progressing onwards. Finally, Echo makes his way to the end of the level, which is a magical clearing where he will finally learn the stone instability.
Moving on to level 2, where you're introduced to the fist. We wanted to introduce it in a way that didn't involve combat, so breakable boxes were a priority. Also, this is where you're introduced to the crystal slam. In this case, it's used to power a door for you to advance. The fist can also be used to solve environmental puzzles, so in this case, blocking rocks. And as Echo progresses, he has to defeat enemies to unlock the next area.
Moving on to the board graveyard. In this level, Echo unlock a new ability to speed attack for dealing with the group of the enemies. And in this area, it's a transition between global viral and the music. Leading to the last area, player has to introduce a new puzzle for the punchable object. Is that going to be solved for this puzzle? So just go to the next area.
Continuing up the volcano, Echo is now faced with the hazard of lava. As shown earlier on, there is a plug puzzle where Echo can drain the basins of lava by plugging up the spout with their pillars. We also are introduced to the island's defense force in the form of the golem. In order to fight the golem, you have to stun it first to lower the crystal on its back. Once it's lowered, damage can actually be dealt with it. Aside from that, it's impervious to damage crack. As we're getting later into levels, we're seeing a lot of the puzzles that we had seen earlier in the form of platforming, bugs, and punch puzzles, but in much greater scale and much harder difficulty. As the island defense tries to stop Echo, there's one last trial he must complete before he's able to claim the crown of stone for himself. Finishing a final crystal puzzle, he's let into the volcano, and where the crown resides. After defeating a few waves of enemies, he's finally able to claim it for himself.
Now having the crown of stone, Echo feels its power flow through him. However, the island isn't done its tricks yet, as the volcano underneath him begins to erupt, and he begins to fall. The final level of our game removes all your limits. Your abilities are infinite, and you can spawn as many pillars as you want as you frantically make your way up from the lava chasing behind you. You'll fight groups of enemies, go across treacherous gaps, and take on the biggest enemy gauntlet yet. After one final puzzle, Echo can finally make his way off the island. After making his treacherous escape, Echo is finally free and able to make his way onto whatever he decides to do next.
Alright, so moving on to the sound and music in our game. About halfway through development, we decided to make a spreadsheet of all the sound effects that we wanted to have in our game. So this made it pretty easy to keep track of them and also just work on a little bit at a time. We also have a modular audio system, which is basically just one Unity prefab dragged onto every object that has sound, and then those objects can communicate with the prefab, so we don't have to recode everything at each time. We have some custom events such as playing a random sound from a list, randomizing pitch, volume, and also fading out a sound for a set amount of time. We also have a dynamic music system, which you hopefully heard in game. When you are in an enemy area, we have like an enemy track that gets layered on top of the music, and then once the player defeats all the enemies, it goes back to normal. Once again, huge thanks to Kennedy, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but her music added a lot to our game.
So, moving on to 2D art. The UI for our game didn't change much in layout, but the look changed a lot. Here are some of the assets we made. So the logo, the game icon, and the health bar, and the pause menu.
This is a closer look at the characters in our game. We have Echo, the main character, who is an earthbender, so he has very earthy tones. He also has rocks on his fists. We have the two pirates, who we also have a system in game that will randomize their clothing color, which just adds a little bit of diversity to the enemy areas. And we also have the island enemies, which are very lava-y and crystal-y, and they're the island's last defense against Echo.
And there is some of our assets that we have done so far for this semester, and we use that for decorate for entire our game.
So moving on to environmental kits. Environmental kits were a priority for us to quickly and professionally detail environments, to make them just look better and to overall improve performance. Hero assets as well were key for us, just to polish our characters and environments. Here are some of our best hits.
And of course, rocks. We made a lot of rocks. Every week, our feedback was most of the time, make more rocks. So we did. But yeah, put in a lot of work towards rocks this semester.
Moving on to some of the visual effects and shaders in our game. We have the lava and water shaders, which do interact with objects that are placed inside of it. As you can see on the bottom, there's some foam around the edges. We have a fire VFX, we have a light ray, we have dust particles. We have a foliage shader, which adds some nice wind movement to the foliage, and it's not shown here, but also when the player walks into a piece of foliage, it will squash down a little bit, so it gives some nice player feedback. And overall, our main goal with these visual effects was just to add a lot more life and movement into our environments.
As well as we have some more gameplay-oriented VFX. We have a stun effect. Stars go around the enemy just to indicate that the enemy is stunned and that they're able to be damaged. As well as we have a stone summon effect, a little poof of smoke and some rocks that go flying out. As well as you can see on the ground, when Echo walks, there's a small poof of dust just for some more feedback. One thing that we really focused on was Agile and Scrum. As you can see, this is how we did it. We had a big spreadsheet that would track what everyone's tasks were, how long we expected them to take. And throughout the week, we could go through and check off what we did each day and just kind of take it down. We can all see how we're doing as we're making our way through it. This was a really big help for us and allowed us to really focus in on what needed to be done. We kind of had a guiding philosophy throughout working on this game, which was functional, fun, and freaking pretty. Functional, we really focused early on getting things working in Unity, those main core mechanics, letting them be used, and actually playable, so we could actually start using testing.
Next, we focus on fun, because nobody wants to play a game that isn't fun. So we did this by implementing systems such as a hit stop and screen shake effect when the player punches something or gets hit. We also put a lot of focus on some fun and clean animations to really add to the feel of the game. And we also have a couple Easter eggs throughout the levels.
And lastly, make that thing freaking pretty. After we had the foundation of our assets, we took a lot of time in that last month to kind of go through and look at everything really critically and just polish, remake things that didn't fit the style and go forward. And post-processing was a big fun time, I think, for all of us. And I think in turn it unified a lot of our game.
Just some more final thoughts. Hard work really pays off. We put over 1,400 hours of work into this game over the past 10, 11 weeks. And yeah, really paid off.
tying back into that the last slide, early functionality is really important because the faster you get things working, the more time you have to polish and make the game good.
Lots of internal testing was also huge. Making a change and seeing if it vibes with the team was massive for us.
Communication was a big strong suit for us. Early on, we kind of established everyone's strengths and roles, and this made delegating tasks and not stepping on each other's toes a lot easier.
And finish the big task as soon as possible.
We also wish we had done a bit more playtesting done. During our big round of playtesting, we had a couple of big bugs that should have been caught earlier that we wish we could have, and if we had maybe done another round of testing before that, they definitely could have been caught.
And put the asset in the game as soon as it's done.
Finally, and most importantly,
keep the ground alive.
I'll pass the mic around to whoever has a question. I'll be the man away here. Kind of the very far side.
Hello. Awesome. Hi. One thing I was curious about is, was it a team effort when it came to the game design, or was there one person who was kind of leading the charge on that?
Which aspect of it?
Just like the overall mechanics, because I felt like it was very clear, very clean. Everything had like a specific goal and purpose, and I thought it worked really well together. I loved how, like, for example, the wall that you can platform on, you can use it to like block stuff, and there was a lot of depth into it, and I'd love to see how like everything could work together. I just wanted to say overall, I thought the game mechanics were really impressive.
It was a really big collaborative effort. Like we said in that first couple slides, we spent a lot of time brainstorming and figuring out what exactly we wanted all the abilities to do. And then we, at least once a week, would gather together and talk through things, just trying to figure out like if we can add anything like those, again, bring those pillars into combat. I think that was a suggestion from someone in the class. So we listened to a lot of feedback that we got from like our peers and our teachers and really tried to implement those as much as possible.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I also want to add, same thing with the player feedback. I feel like that's something that's often overlooked or forgotten, but you did such a good job making it clear to the player what is happening. Like just watching it, I felt like I could feel the feedback as if I was playing. It was very clear when I hit an enemy, when an enemy hit me, when I was blocking, what was happening. Everything was really clear and really well done. So yeah, great job.
Anyone else for Mike?
I would say the quality control, I really admire the details. For example, on the blocks where they were like pushed, you kept like, I don't know, scratches on the, like those little details that actually just add like UI with the top bar, plus those details that you see with the time, the textures get, or like the shaders. So who was basically doing the quality control of that? Like who was?
It was all kind of like a group effort, to be honest. Like Heather was our art lead, but like we all kind of like joined in together and kind of like really solidified the art style.
Yeah, because you say freaking pretty, but it's so smart. Like I was just seeing the damage between levels is you can see it. Also the lighting, really nice job. That's something I want to ask, like who was thinking about which level, what type of lighting, or how you're going to the narrative, because it's very clear.
Holy shit, I don't know.
Please do.
Is this still? Yeah. Early on, we actually met with one of our teachers and we said, is it possible that we could have 2 different color palettes for a level? Because it's one thing just to darken the lighting, because then like if anyone's ever done digital art, putting an overlay on something can only get you so far. And so it was a big thing of basically almost all of our assets have kind of 2 variations of it depending on what level they belong to. And then adding post-processing and tinting our levels really just tied every asset together with that.
Yeah, because it was impressive the pops that are coming, also with actually they have the props that are constrained, like all the smoke, all that coming in VFX. Very nice job. Like I can see what is actually wood, but actually the different type of materials. Like everything looked like one shader, but it's not. So that VFX actually adds the difference in between. And I can hear the footsteps walking through, so that was amazing.
My favorite fact about the footsteps is they're actually synced up to the actual footsteps player, which is great.
Wow. Anyone else? As soon as the mic comes out, the questions go. No? Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Just about to wrap it up. Thank you. For students, this is only half your day, right? So Industry Day is done. We are prepping for Industry Evening. As Jeff mentioned, there's going to be pizza for everyone. Game students are going to be on the mezzanine. Animation students are going to be on the third floor in the back room, 3:30. That's where pizza will be for you. Industry guests, it's time for going over to dinner and of course drinks, which is super important.
Yeah. And just so you guys are aware, everything's Fanshawe made and prepared over there. It's a wonderful meal. I know a lot of you guys have been here last year. One more round of applause for appreciation for them being here.